For 7 straight years, these two worked side by side. So imagine hearing someone casually say this to their partner: maybe I should just keep checking everything for both of us from now on. What would you think? Would you call it kindness, responsibility, loyalty, or something even deeper? That was the exact moment that caught everyone's attention during a Japanese television appearance in 2026. Ryuichi Kihara said those words to Riku Miura with a smile so natural it almost felt rehearsed by years of shared life experience. Sitting beside him, Miura laughed awkwardly and replied, "Well, I guess that's true." The exchange lasted only seconds, yet somehow it felt incredibly personal. And today I want to talk about why that single sentence carried so much emotional weight. Of course, this is only my personal interpretation. I'm not claiming to know the full truth about their relationship, but after watching these two spend 7 years building something extraordinary together, it becomes harder and harder to see them as just teammates. To understand why, we need to go back to February 25th, 2026, the day the 2026 Winter Olympics changed everything for Japanese pair skating. That was the night Riku Miura and Ryuichi Kihara finally captured Olympic gold after 7 years of sacrifice, injuries, pressure and trust. Japan erupted in celebration. Social media exploded with congratulations. Newspapers covered the front pages with their smiles. It felt like the entire country had witnessed history. But then something unexpected happened the very next day. During a press conference in Tokyo, Kihara casually revealed that Miura had accidentally left her backpack behind at the airport after returning from the Olympics. Reporters were stunned, because inside that backpack was the Olympic gold medal itself. Yes, the medal they spent 7 years fighting for had nearly been forgotten at baggage claim. Miura laughed nervously while admitting it, and the entire room burst into laughter. Even the moderator jokingly reminded her not to forget the medal again. On the surface, it sounded like a funny story, a harmless little mistake. But the more I thought about it, the more fascinating it became, because this wasn't just any object. This was an Olympic gold medal, the kind of achievement most athletes spend their entire lives chasing and never touch even once. So how do you accidentally leave something like that behind? That question led to something much deeper. As it turns out, forgetting things has quietly become one of the defining themes of the relationship between Miura and Kihara. During that same press conference, when Kihara was asked about Miura's weaknesses, his answer came instantly: "She forgets things all the time." No hesitation, no thinking, just immediate recognition. And then another television appearance revealed even more. The two were participating in a quiz segment where they were asked whether there was anything about the other person that caused problems. Both of them raised their signs immediately. Miura admitted that Kihara could be too serious, especially when it came to dieting and training during the off-season. But when it was Kihara's turn, his answer was simple: she forgets everything. He even shared a story about Miura forgetting the skating costume she needed for an ice show performance. Staff members had to rush back and retrieve it before the event began, and while telling the story, Kihara smiled and calmly added, "Maybe I'll just keep checking everything for both of us from now on." Honestly, that line changes everything, because that isn't the kind of sentence people normally use for coworkers. "I'll check your things too." That sounds deeply personal. Intimate, even. It sounds like the kind of role people naturally develop after years of living beside each other. Of course, long-term partnerships naturally create these habits. One person becomes better with schedules, the other remembers directions, one forgets appointments, so the other starts reminding them automatically. That happens in friendships, marriages, families, and work relationships all the time. But checking for both of us feels different somehow, because checking someone else's belongings means understanding their daily life. You need to know which bag they use, which costume belongs to which performance, what they're likely to forget, and how their routines work. You don't say something like that unless another person's life has become naturally connected to your own. And the most interesting part, Kihara didn't speak about it in the past tense. He said, "I'll keep doing it." As if this has already been their rhythm for years and will continue to be moving forward. That's why so many fans reacted emotionally to that moment. Because to many people, it didn't sound like a sports partnership anymore. It sounded like a married couple quietly taking care of each other in everyday life. A husband double-checking the bags before leaving the house because he knows his wife tends to forget things. Small routines built through years of trust. Again, I'm not claiming to know what kind of relationship they truly have. But if there is something beyond the label of teammates, it probably appears in tiny moments exactly like these. And maybe that's why their story resonates so strongly around the world. Because behind the Olympic medals, world titles, and historic performances, there's also something beautifully ordinary. Forgotten backpacks, missing costumes, daily routines, and one person quietly saying, "Don't worry, I'll check for both of us." There's one thing I personally believe after watching these two for so many years: relationships like this can only be built through time. Real time. Shared routines, shared pressure, shared silence, and maybe that's why one short conversation between them felt so unbelievably powerful. When Ryuichi Kihara casually said, "Maybe I'll keep checking everything for both of us," Riku Miura simply smiled and answered, "I guess that's true." It was such a small exchange, yet the timing between them felt almost perfect. The pauses matched, the rhythm matched. It sounded like two people who had spent years learning each other without even trying. I don't know what their relationship truly is, and honestly, none of us do. But I can't help wondering how many people in the world can speak to each other that naturally after 7 years together. And that brings us into the deeper part of this story. Because the phrase "checking for both of us" didn't appear overnight, it was built through years of small moments most people never notice. Tiny habits, tiny sacrifices, tiny acts of care that slowly became part of everyday life. To understand that, we need to return once again to the 2026 Milan Cortina Olympics. During the short program, Miura and Kihara made a major mistake that dropped them to 5th place in figure skating. A gap like that is enormous. Most experts believed the gold medal was out of reach. The podium itself looked uncertain, but then came the free skate. What happened next became one of the greatest comeback performances in Olympic figure skating history. They delivered a world record score of 158.13 points and captured the gold medal in dramatic fashion. And afterward, in the kiss and cry area, the cameras captured a moment the world couldn't stop talking about. Kihara wrapped his arms around Miura. Miura held onto his back, and for nearly 30 seconds neither of them let go. That hug instantly spread across social media with one question attached to it: are they really just skating partners? I've watched that clip over and over again, and every time I come to the same conclusion: that emotion didn't begin in that moment. Those 30 seconds were carrying 7 years of history, the daily rides to practice, the meals together in the kitchen. Moving into neighboring apartments, the forgotten costumes, the backpacks left behind, and Kihara constantly saying, "I'll check for both of us." All of it was compressed into that single embrace, and honestly that's why the forgetfulness matters so much, because the habits people forget are deeply personal. Most coworkers don't know exactly what another person tends to leave behind, but if you spend every day beside someone for 7 years, eventually you begin to notice everything. You learn when they become distracted. You learn how stress affects them. You learn that before competitions they become so focused that small details disappear from their mind. Kihara didn't just observe Miura's habits, he adapted to them. At one point, he even joked that Miura forgetting more things during the Olympics might actually have been proof that she was fully concentrated. Think about how meaningful that is. He didn't describe her flaw negatively. Instead, he reframed it as part of who she is, almost like he had spent so much time understanding her that even her weaknesses had become familiar and lovable to him. And Miura did the same thing in return. When asked what troubled her about Kihara, she laughed and said he was too serious. During the off-season, he would become strict with dieting, and somehow she would end up restricting her own meals too. But listen carefully to what that really means. That's not the story of two distant co-workers. That's the story of two people sharing daily life closely enough that one person's eating habits begin affecting the others. Whether they were eating at the same table or simply living close enough to smell each other's cooking through neighboring apartments, the point is the same. Their lives were constantly overlapping. And the fascinating part was Miura's expression while talking about it. She sounded annoyed but not truly upset. If anything, she looked amused. Almost affectionate. That's why fans in Japan eventually started calling them something closer to a married comedy duo than ordinary athletes, because even in interviews and variety shows, they moved with a natural rhythm that can't really be scripted. One speaks, the other reacts immediately. The timing always lands perfectly. That kind of chemistry can't be practiced. It only comes from living through years together, and maybe that's what makes Kihara's story even more emotional. Because before Miura contacted him in 2019, he admitted he had seriously considered retiring from skating altogether. Miura gave him a reason to continue, and from that moment on their lives slowly became connected in ways neither of them probably expected. She called him, he stayed, she forgot things. He started checking for both of them. How much emotion exists inside those simple routines, honestly, none of us can truly know. But maybe the clearest answer came during their retirement press conference in April 2026. Miura looked directly at Kihara and quietly said, "Thank you for skating with me. That was it, no dramatic speech, no formal wording, just a simple, deeply personal sentence, and Kihara immediately broke down in tears. Why would thank you hit someone that hard, because that sentence carried everything underneath it? You chose me. You stayed. You carried this life beside me for 7 years. I wouldn't be standing here without you. Kihara tried to smile through the tears, but he couldn't hold them back, and honestly it felt like those tears were carrying the collapse of an entire shared life built over 7 years. The daily rides, the meals, the neighboring rooms, the forgotten costumes, the airport backpack, the phrase, "I'll check for both of us." Every single routine depended on the idea of us. And suddenly that chapter was ending. Maybe that's why Miura smiled while Kihara cried. Some people believe she had emotionally prepared herself earlier. Maybe that's true. But personally I wonder if she smiled because he was crying. For 7 years that seemed to be their balance. When one person became anxious, the other steadied them. When one person looked ready to break down, the other stayed strong. Maybe checking for both of us was never just about luggage. Maybe they spent 7 years checking each other's emotions too. And honestly, that may be the most beautiful part of their story.